Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I like to give my thoughts on the US presidential debate between the Orange one and Harris yesterday. I say debate, that's being charitable, although I do have a little concern about things from Harris's point of view. But, naturally, both sides are claiming they easily won. The proof will be in polling, of course. I think it's fair to say Trump's claim that he won the debate by a lot is probably not how key voters will have seen it. Certainly the polling I've seen so far suggests Harris won. I'd have been even more worried for America if ordinary people could have watched that and thought, yeah, Trump did quite well. It's not just that Trump was incoherent, rambling and telling the most ridiculous lies. The sort of lies a particularly thick 5-year-old tries to tell when they're accused of eating all the biscuits. He's still trying to push this notion of the Democrats aborting babies after 9 months. Mate, that's called giving birth. But I always look at these sorts of things and I think to myself, how will target voters see them? I don't think about ordinary people. I just like the target voters, the key voters, the people who think elections are important enough to vote in, but they don't want to live and breathe politics in between. They don't really have political philosophies. They'll quite happily flip between one candidate and another. Last year I was seeing the sort of things people were posting that Trump had said on Truth Social, and I was thinking to myself, this is proper mad. Even by his standards, this was proper madcap. What are those ordinary apolitical swing voters going to think when they see this? And I was thinking to myself, they're not seeing this yet. They're not seeing this. But no matter what the polling has looked like at any point in the past, I kept saying, once the presidential campaign really gets into the end game, and Trump has to go out and about making speeches, and the news is increasingly reporting on it because the presidential election is about to happen. And then those apolitical voters who are like saying, I'm not interested in politics, not interested in politics, all of a sudden go, OK, there's an election, I'm going to vote in it. So let's have a look. They're going to see a deranged madman. Now, for a while, this was thrown into some doubt as the media were highlighting Biden's problems, completely ignoring the fact that Trump had essentially the identical issues, which were way more severe, as well as a load of other issues as well. Biden had good and bad days. You can still argue that's reason enough to drop him as a candidate, but Trump only had bad days. He's lost it. But he's also not taking it seriously. You would have thought he'd be taking it much more seriously, given that he could easily find himself behind bars if he doesn't win this contest, right? We already know that Trump has been battling his own party strategists who want him to focus strategically on policies. He's refused to do so, made a big song and dance of refusing to do so. But it's not just that he thinks he has a better strategy. You can imagine the conceit of the man who just thinks he knows better, right? It seems clear he just finds any strategy too taxing for him. So he reverts to his ad hominem lines of attack. Works great, I'm sure, for many of those who were going to vote for him anyway. But the debates are not an appeal to supporters. They're supposed to be a pitch to the undecided. Harris had a game plan. In fact, at times it looked like she was actively baiting Trump into worthless attack lines against her and her party to cover for the ones that might have hit home. It's what people should have seen in the first debate if the focus were not on Biden's poor performance. There was nothing Harris did that was particularly stellar. In fact, as I say, there were a couple of worrying little moments. She presented standard policies, nothing particularly special, nothing particularly attractive about them. She ridiculed Trump's more insane statements. Trump was having to be fact-checked several times. One big mistake, mind you, that has been seized upon is Trump said we when referring to the insurrectionists. Harris's campaign can certainly use that. Trump himself, as pickled as his brain is these days, he recognised the slip-up, had to correct himself. He still backs them up, but he avoided claiming to be part of the group after that. But having lies called out multiple times by the host of the debate, that doesn't help him. After all, let's say you're his swing voter. You don't particularly have good or bad thoughts about any candidate. You're just looking at them, you decided between the two. You see that Trump is being called out for telling lies multiple times during a presidential debate. Unless you think he was being stitched up by CNN, you are going to then doubt anything he says for the rest of the campaign. If Trump had bothered to prepare for the debate, if he was taking it seriously, he would have been focused on the sort of voter he was appealing to. It's not the MAGA crowd. They're going to vote for him anyway. It was just ordinary people who don't pay attention to politics but are going to vote. He should have canned the crazy shit about aborting babies after they're born and people eating pets and focused on the more crowd-pleasing policies and attacking Harris for anything he can credibly claim is going wrong in America at the moment. That's all he had to do. Bash the government. It's a sport as old as the hills. Bash the government along the lines that the public already agree with and promise shiny things, hoping they forget he didn't bother to deliver them the last time he was president. But he couldn't even do that. When he was asked directly about policy, hadn't a clue. He was asked about his plan for healthcare. Now, this is one of the most important issues for any population. No different in America. The affordability of healthcare was the third most important issue in a poll from earlier this year. Hardly surprising when getting sick or injured bankrupts so many Americans each year. You know how many people in Europe go bankrupt over healthcare costs? 0. So important issue, and any serious presidential candidate has a response ready to what will be an obvious question, right? The response from the overgrown Oompa Loompa was, I have concepts of a plan. Concepts of a plan, what is that? The man who's already been president and wants to be president again in just 4 months. This is his third presidential campaign and he's only got the concepts of a plan for healthcare. He wasn't even asked a very specific question on healthcare, really. I mean, I'll tell you what, if the orange one does win the presidency again, America deserves everything it gets. I feel sorry for the rest of us. You know, it's one thing to fall for the grift back in 2016. Trump's line about draining the swamp resonated. I said many times before, conventional politicians allowed the monster to rise up because they didn't do enough to prioritise living standards. It was like they just tried to do the bare minimum so that one of them could beat the other. They were competing with each other. Then this thing emerged, right? Democrats and Republicans both just took ordinary people for granted. They allowed the conditions for populism to flourish. But with Trump unable to explain his policy in something so important, it would take people hell-bent on self-destruction to decide to let him run their government again. And it wasn't just healthcare. He couldn't describe his policies on anything. He didn't even want to talk about them. He took every opportunity to go to his safe place of talking absolute bollocks. And that suited Harris perfectly. It meant she didn't get pressed particularly hard on her own policies, and Trump came across like the guy who spends his day shouting at ducks. Ill-tempered, rambling, utterly mad. And Harris just very much had the look of the one in control. But it would be interesting in many ways to see how Harris would have matched up against a serious political opponent, because some of her responses to policy questions were a bit faltering. But Trump just was never seizing on any of them. He didn't recognise them. It makes you wonder if Harris's team will feel maybe a bit too safe on policy, that they can win just by showcasing the madman that is the alternative and expect Americans to say, well, we're going to prioritise sanity. I'm quite sure if they're at the ballot box, that's what many will do. But they have the option to not vote at all. Because as much as they won't vote for Trump, you know, is Harris giving them enough reason to vote for her? It would be grim if Trump did end up winning what is expected to be a depressingly tight contest. And the post-election debrief concludes that voters didn't like Trump, sure, but they didn't feel Harris had done enough to earn their vote. Because I understand the temptation to avoid talking about policy more than you need to, and that Trump is not really forcing her to talk about it. Politicians always avoid talking about policy because every policy has a cost as well as a benefit, and there are some policies that you'll sort of believe are right, you don't think the public will. You want to avoid talking about costs, though. All policies have costs. You want to avoid people talking about the costs that come with voting for you. It's one of the reasons populists keep coming back, because they promise there won't be costs. There'll never be downsides, there's only benefits. It's what they always say. They never deliver it, but it's what they always say. But if you won't talk about policy for fear of having others talk about the cost, then you're also not talking about the benefits that come with those policies. Now, there were some positives, like the biggest one, I suppose, was the Roe v. Wade being implemented. She was saying she was looking forward to implementing it into law, signing it into law as president. I think that's contingent on multiple results, though. But there wasn't really a lot else, because other policy statements were actually around safe issues for key voters, but I don't think any of them were really, this will make your life better. Now, Trump is so crazy, hopefully that will still be enough, but it is a worry of mine. After all, the crazy vote always turns out. When you end up with a crazy government, quite often it's because more sensible voters who absolutely would have wished the other one would have won in preference, stayed at home, didn't do anything about it themselves. They stayed at home because they fixated on this one thing. Oh, I didn't like that. Oh, they said this thing, I wasn't keen on that. Or they failed to say this thing that I wanted them to say. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe for further content and click the like button. You can also sign up for memberships if you'd like to support the channel further. Thanks for watching. Until next time, I'll see you later.